A coming of age story about an Asian man in the 90s trying to find himself and find his cultural identity? This sounds familiar. Let's check out Riceboy Sleeps. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watcher Pass, and today I'm here to talk about Riceboy Sleeps, which comes to digital on May 2nd, 2023. It's a new indie coming-of-age film about a single mother and her young boy who are in Canada trying to kind of build a better life for themselves and the trials and tribulations that happen throughout. So my hot take is, look, I definitely think you should watch it. It is just a wonderful, slow burn coming of age film that has some really real characters, some very raw emotions, and just a fantastic journey that you get to go on. I thought it was really well done. I thought it felt very like raw and real. I definitely think you should check it out. So I'm going to tell you a little more about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then very briefly go into the ending. As you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the ending section. If you don't want to know what happens in the film, I would turn it off at the ending section, but before that, I'll keep it vague. I will keep it spoiler free, and I'll let you know when I get to those spoilers. So in Riceboy Sleeps, you have a Korean mother, Seung-Yoon, and her young son, Dong-Hyun, or David. They're living in Canada, growing up in a small town. They're kind of like essentially the only Asian people in this area. His mother works in a factory. David goes to school, and it's a lot about her just trying to kind of build a better life for him in this country and the things that happened to David throughout. It feels like a very personal story, and it is based on kind of the director and writer Anthony Shim's, upbringing, and also some of the other stories he heard and saw, in growing up in Canada. So you would get to see this emotional journey as So-Young tries to build a better life for her and her son, and try to kind of deal with some of the things that happened to her in Korea that caused her to leave. So things I liked about this film. The first, I love the music. The music is fantastic in this film. It's this like really beautiful orchestral music that helps to kind of heighten the drama when it happens. This is a pretty dramatic film, where you've got some things that happen to both David and So Young that are very difficult. And so the music in this film really kind of helps to build up that emotion when it happens, and it is beautiful. The second thing I really loved is how like the raw story. I almost like want to say like the realism. This feels like a very kind of real, authentic journey. Some of the things that happened to David growing up feel like some of the things that could have happened to a kid who's just different in a school. He is picked on because he's Asian. He's picked on for what he eats. He's picked on, just for the way he looks. And it seems like the school and the parents and the principal don't really understand the effect that that has, and kind of the emotional weight that that has. And then seeing how So Young has to deal with all of this while she's trying to work and build a better life for her family also felt very real and raw and emotional. And the film doesn't just deal with that. Like it kind of continues to other facets of their life and their life journey, but just everything about this film feels like an authentic look into a small family growing up in a foreign nation. It was just really kind of wonderful and painful sometimes to see. The third thing I loved, and this is kind of related to the kind of real aspect and the raw aspect, the characters. The characters here feel very fleshed out. They feel very different. And I liked that they didn't, I don't know, fit the mold of some kind of Asian characters that you see in film. And that's not to say that there's not good Asian character portrayals, but I felt like the ones here felt complex. They felt real. They kind of bucked some of the trends that you see in Hollywood movies. So Young is like a very strong Asian woman who is, knows what she wants. She is just trying to build a better life, and she doesn't see you see how fierce but also nervous she is at times for her upbringing. And then David feels like a very kind of real character that is kind of in between two worlds. He's like not fully in touch with his Korean side, but not fully accepted by kind of the Canadian culture. And that felt very real. That felt very kind of authentic, and it definitely hit close to home at times. The fourth thing I loved is the emotional journey. You get some very intense and very kind of emotional character growth from all the characters, but mainly from So Young and David throughout this film. You kind of, the people that you have at the end of the film are very different from the ones that you see at the start. And it's not just the age, you get different values, you get different kind of wants in life. It is such a emotional journey, and it is wonderful to kind of go through. And the last thing I loved is the mixed dialogue. This felt like a very kind of again, the way that the characters talk and interact in this film felt very real because the characters kind of go between English and Korean almost interchangeably. Like there will be conversations where there will be like a line in English and then it'll switch to Korean, or if So-Young is talking to David, like she'll use Korean and then he'll respond in English. It was really interesting to see, and it felt like how a kind of mixed culture family would talk, how you kind of like would have it almost just be interchangeable. And so I really love seeing that. I liked that this film didn't shy away from having a lot of Korean dialogue. It kind of starts with kind of a Korean narrative, which was interesting because the film starts in Canada. But I did love that it felt comfortable going back and forth between Korean and English throughout. It felt like a very kind of, again, real. Like this film just feels very real. It feels very real and raw and emotional, and it definitely is something that you should check out. So that is Riceboy Sleeps. It comes to digital on May 2nd, 2023. Definitely check it out when you can. I'm gonna go into the ending right now because I loved the ending. I loved kind of the emotional journey that this film had. But just be warned, there will be spoilers in the ending section. So if you don't want to know what happens in the film, and you probably don't, there are some big surprises and some big kind of character developments. Turn it off now and come back after you've seen the film. So in Riceboy Sleeps, you have So-Young and David who are growing up in a small town in Canada. So-Young works in a factory. She is trying to build a better life for David, and David is going to school, but he gets picked on early on. The first kind of part of the film deals with like him getting picked on for the way he looks, for wearing glasses, for the food that he eats. He eats like Korean food at school, and the kids all think it's weird, so he starts wanting to have sandwiches. And also the school's reaction to some of this. David has some violent outbursts because the kids are like picking on him and calling him names and spitting on him. And the school just like puts all the blame on David, doesn't like punish any of the other kids. And it felt like almost everything is against So-Young and David at the start. You kind of fast forward to David kind of growing up and being a little more integrated. He has some friends, he's got kind of a little clique, but he still gets picked on. He still is kind of like one of a few Asian people in this area. And so you see that journey as well. You see him kind of lash out some more because either he gets picked on or some other Asian people in the school get picked on, and he's trying to stand up for them. And through all this, you have So-Young still working at the factory and starting to have a relationship with, I think he's like a foreman, this person named Simon, who's played by Anthony Shim, the writer and director. They start to kind of develop a relationship. That all changes when So-Young goes into the doctor for some back pain that she's had. She's working at a factory, she's getting older, she stands up a lot. Back pain is probably normal, but what we find out is that she has stage 4 pancreatic cancer that is spread to other organs as well. So it's going to be terminal. They can maybe prolong her life a little bit, but she is going to die. And so this kind of flips a switch in her, and it causes her to want to go back to Korea, go back to where she kind of grew up, and introduce David to the rest of his family. I think she doesn't really have any family. David's father committed suicide, or right after he was born or right before he was born. So So-Young is kind of the only family and the only connection he has to Korea. So I think she wants to bring him back so he can understand a little bit more about where she came from and also connect with some of the family out there. She hasn't seen her in-laws in a long time because I think they blamed her for their son's death, for their son's suicide, and also it was too painful. So she left to go to Canada to raise David, but now she wants to come back. She brings David back to Korea, and so this film kind of has two halves almost. It's amazing that like all the Canada experience is about half of the movie, and then the Korea experience is about half of the movie as well. And so the whole second half is set in Korea, where David and So-Young are going to her in-laws and introducing them and kind of getting to know them. And David's kind of experiencing this culture in this like family setting for the first time. It's really interesting. He has like an uncle who kind of looks out for him. He's got a grandfather in there, and he kind of starts to develop this like family environment that is really nice to see. I think it really helps him. His grandpa like gives him some of his old memorabilia. He really kind of gets a connection to this family and this history. And So-Young starts to kind of patch up some of the pain that she had when she left Korea. So they spend some time there. David kind of like goes through some emotional growth. He shaves his head. Like he has this like long highlighted hair. He just shaves his head. He kind of becomes a very different person out here, which was nice to see. But the ultimate goal is to go to So-Young's husband / David's dad's grave and just kind of visit him. And so David can kind of like meet his dad. And so that requires a little bit more of a journey. His dad was buried in this beautiful kind of meadow space, but it's a little bit of a ways. It's up a hill. And so after they spend some time with So-Young's in-laws, they decide to they kind of make their way up to this grave. And at this point, So-Young she's starting to kind of like get worn down by the cancer. She's starting to kind of like wear her body's kind of like starting to wear down. So they start walking, and she is having trouble going. She like throws up. It's tough for her to kind of keep going. So David says, like, you know, at this pace, we're not going to make it until nightfall. So he like picks her up and carries her on his back and like carries her up the rest of the way, which was a beautiful moment. I really loved this scene because so much of the movie was So-Young trying to like carry David, you know, metaphorically through life, like trying to kind of look out for him, give him a better life, take care of him, you know, do his laundry, make sure he eats, you know, make sure he stays out of trouble. And this was kind of the first time that David stepped up and kind of switched that role, and he kind of took on the burden. So I loved how it showed his growth. I love how it showed how much he's changed, and also like how much he really does care about his mom. I mean, of course he cares about his mom, but this is one where you really see like how much he values her. So he carries her up to the grave. They make it to the grave. They spend some time at the grave. You know, David pours him a drink, you know, the gravestone drink. They set out some food and some displays and things like that. They just spend time with him. And then towards the end, when it's starting to kind of get dark, there's just this very raw scene where So-Young just kind of like starts screaming, because I think she's like, she has done the best. She's built a life. She's raised David. She's kind of like, she has turned him into this good kid, but her life has been very tough. Like, her husband killed himself. She had to raise David on her own in a strange country where there weren't many other Asians. There weren't many other Asians, let alone many other Koreans. So she has just kind of had to do a lot on her own. And now that David's finally kind of like starting to almost be an adult, and she's starting to have a relationship and, you know, could be happy, she gets cancer. So I think she is just kind of like overwhelmed and angry at everything. And so she just screams a few times, just like lets it out at the grave. And after that, after she kind of like lets it all out, she tells David it's time to go home. When she says home, I assume she means go back to Canada. I don't think she means like go back to Korea, but maybe David will stay in Korea. But she just says, let's go home. And that's the end of the movie. I also really liked, it was very kind of a stark contrast to see the first part of the movie, which is a little bit darker, more dull. Like the colors are more muted in that. I think that was definitely by design. Like when they're in Canada, when they're living that life, everything is a little bit more drab. And then when they get to Korea, everything is brighter. Like colors are more beautiful. There's more greenery. This film just seems to take on more pop and more life. I mean, that is definitely by design. I think it's showing, you know, maybe that was like So-Young's mental state. Like in Canada, I don't think she was super happy, but she was just trying to raise David. But then in Korea, you know, it felt like a much kind of brighter, happier existence, even though there were some very sad things that happened. So I thought that was a very interesting kind of way to frame the film. And overall, look, I love this film. I thought it was really well done. I think it's a really good coming of age story. I think it kind of deals with the immigrant experience in a very different way and maybe a little more realistic way. So I definitely think you should check it out. That is Riceboy Sleeps. It comes to digital on May 2nd, 2023. And thanks so much for watching. If you liked this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.